Hello, we are going to continue with the book of Leviticus. It's sort of named after one of Jacob's sons, Levi or Levi. He was the most priestly son and the most gifting with handling God's things and representing the people. So God created everything, but sometimes you wonder, where are you, God? Where are you? So God talked to this guy Moses, and he said, after you bring people out of Egypt, I want you to build me something like a temple, but it could move. It was made of frames and curtains. It was like a tent, a gigantic tent with walls. He had a courtyard in front of the tent, gigantic tent. But after Moses built it with much help, people brought materials, and then he had two master craftsmen. God came down in full sight of the Israelites as the glory of the Lord. And he filled the tabernacle. So God came to live on the earth with Moses and the Israelites. So it seems like God does not want to leave you alone, He wants to be here, and you could find him. All right, let's continue now. Leviticus 1. It is called the burnt offering. The Lord, that's God, the Creator. He called to Moses, and he spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any one among you brings an offering to the Lord, that's him, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is from the herd, offer a male without defect. You must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, so it will be acceptable to the Lord, to him. You are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. You are to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and splash it against the sides of the altar at the entrance to the tent of meeting. You are to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priest, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash the internal organs and the legs with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Now, if the offering is from the flock, from sheep or the goats, sheep are those things that go bad, and the goats, they have horns and they have like a little beard. You have to look it up. Again, offer a male without defect. and you are to slaughter it at the north side of the altar before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. You are to cut it into pieces, and the priest shall arrange them, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash again the organs and legs, and the priest will bring all of it and burn it on the altar. Again, it is a burnt offering, food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Okay, so in verse 14, we see that the Lord will accept a burnt offering of birds. And you may think, well, didn't he just say that it has to be from the herd or the flock? You are to offer a dove or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off its head, and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He is to remove the crop and the feathers and throw them down east of the altar. Just throw them down. Where the ashes are. He shall tear it open by the wings, not dividing it completely. Then the priest shall burn it on the wood. Again, it is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. That is Leviticus 1. Leviticus 2, the grain offering. When anyone brings a grain offering to the Lord, their offering is to be of the finest flour. They are to pour olive oil on it, put incense on it, and take it to Aaron's sons, the priests. The priest shall take a handful of the flour and oil. Kind of messy. Together with all the incense, and burn it. Burn this as a memorial portion on the altar. So there's a note here, memorial portion. Memorial is representative. A food offering, aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the food offerings presented to the Lord. Interesting. If you bring a grain offering baked in an oven, it is to consist of the finest flour, either thick loaves made without yeast and with olive oil mixed in, or thin loaves made without yeast and brushed with olive oil. So if you bring to God back then a skinnier loaf of bread, you have to brush it with olive oil. But if it's a bigger loaf of bread, it has to have olive oil mixed in with the flour, like before you bake it. If your grain offering is prepared on a griddle, again, it is to be made of the finest flour mixed with oil and without yeast. You know what the word for yeast is in Hebrew? It's chametz or chametz. Crumble it and pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. So when you take, it's like when you take flour and you mix oil in it. Maybe you have to put a little water. When you put it on the griddle, and you crumble it. It's kind of like a cookie. I want to say it's like a pancake, but if it doesn't have a lot of water in it, it's kind of like a dry pancake. So they said that you have to crumble it up and then pour more oil on it. If your grain offering is cooked in a pan, again, it is to be made of the finest flour and some olive oil. Bring the grain offering made of these things to the Lord. Present it to the priest, who shall take it to the altar. So he shall take out the memorial portion, burn it on the altar as a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of it belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the food offerings presented to the Lord. Every grain offering you bring to the Lord must be made without yeast, for you are not to burn any yeast or honey in a food offering. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering of the first fruits, but they are not to be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all your offerings. If you bring a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, offer crushed heads of new grain, roasted in the fire. So do not burn yeast or honey in a food offering. Put oil and incense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest shall burn the memorial portion of the crushed grain and the oil, together with all the incense, as a food offering presented to the Lord. Let's go on to Leviticus 3. Now we are looking at the fellowship offering. If your offering is a fellowship offering, and you offer an animal from the herd, whether male or female, you are to present before the Lord an animal without defect. You are to lay your hand on the head of your offering and slaughter it at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall splash the blood against the sides of the altar. From the fellowship offering, you are to bring a food offering to the Lord. The internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. Then Aaron's sons are to burn it on the altar, on top of the burnt offering that is lying on the burning wood. It is a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. If you offer an animal from the flock, you are to offer a male or female. So remember, the burnt offering, it has to be a male animal. So the fellowship offerings, they could be a male or female animal. If you offer a lamb, you are to present it before the Lord. Lay your hand on its head and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. From the fellowship offering, you are to bring a food offering to the Lord. It's fat, the entire fat tail, cut off close to the backbone. The internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins and the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering presented to the Lord. If your offering is a goat, you are to present it before the Lord. Lay your hand on its head and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. From what you offer, you are to present this food offering to the Lord, the internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them, near the loins and the long lobe of the liver. It's kind of the long lobe of the liver. The internal organs and all the fat that is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, with the long lobe of the liver, which you will remove with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering, a pleasing aroma. All the fat is the Lord's. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Wherever you live, you must not eat any fat or any blood. God, how can I not eat any fat? A steak has fat on it. I can't eat any fat. Blood I can handle, So, back then, God had some harsh requirements, but maybe they were too fat back then. Maybe when they left Egypt, they're all like 300 pounds. And then God was like, you guys are too fat, so take it away from you. No fat eating. Right, so remember, put God first. He'll take your places.